This field hasn't been mowed in 20 some years, and when I was mowing, you look at the woods line down here in the indentation, and when I came across this area here, the tractor hit this, it kind of jerked, so it had a dip, like a little ravine. So I was suspecting that it might be a wash where there might be a spring. So first night I dug in here at the beginning of the ravine where it was dipping. And I'm down probably 10 to 14 feet. That's a dangerous hole to be in. You never know when they can collapse. You don't want to be in a ditch that's more than 5 feet deep. That can collapse on you and kill you. So anyway, I dug it. I quit at 14 feet and was going to backfill it, but I let it set a little bit, and the bottom had some water. I knew I had seepage, and we're in a dry spill where the ground, if you look at the top here, it's bone dry, pretty deep. So there is water in there, and I cut downhill and tried to keep it fairly level, just a real little slope. And if you look down the ditch, you can see water is through the whole ditch. So that's fairly level. So what's going to happen here is I'm going to use the plastic pipe. I have 1.25 inches. I'm going to put that into a perforated drain towel, 20 feet of it, and this whole end here will be covered in gravel. The spring is in a layer. If you look at the soil, you have the topsoil, then it breaks down into clay. Then right at the bottom, you can see stones that are falling in, and there's some smaller gravel. That is where the water is coming in. That is the spring source. This is 10 tons of gravel. It's about 300 feet. And this is going to go into the spring head where the water is coming in. This is where the spring is ending, or the flow. It's seeping into the ground. The flow isn't that great, but again, it'll be 24/7 that it's flowing. If we come up here a little bit further where the clay is, you can see right in this area where it's trickling down. Right here you can see a little bit better. And of course, the whole time it's flowing, it's seeping into the ground here. So when we get the pipe in and backfilled, we should get a good idea of what the actual flow rate will be. If this is successful, I'm going to pump this water up into the house. My drinking water, I go to a neighbor's spring. It's off a dirt road in the woods. Perfect drinking water. Now we're getting this, we're probably 6-7 foot deep here. Well, let's prep our pipe. You can see this area right here. You can see it trickling. So from here all the way down, it's going downhill. The end that's going to be buried in the spring has a cap on it, and the pipe just came that way. The other end's open. I'm going to leave the cap in, but what I'm going to do is drill a few holes in the cap, and that should let or keep bigger stones from coming through. Okay, now what I'm going to do, about 4 feet on the end, I'm going to drill a bunch of holes through this, and of course I'm using the 1/4 inch bit. And I'm going to do this for about 4 feet. Then this end is going to be placed inside this perforated 4-inch perforated pipe, and I have 2 lengths that'll be 20 feet, and this will go in to that pipe, maybe, well, it'll go in the 4 feet, maybe a little bit more, and then that all will be buried in the gravel. This is the, the perforated end. And I have it drilled this far. So what I'm going to do next, drill a hole in this. Piece of wire. I don't want this to come out when I put it in the hole, because I don't want to go down into that hole. It's too deep. Here's the outflow of the ditch, and the water still is not coming through the pipe. I don't expect that to happen until I cover the spring area with the clay and subsoil. And the spring is up here, and you can see all this gravel that's in there. Let me cross the ditch. What do I have? Probably 30 or more feet where I put gravel. I threw some of the big stones in. I'm ready to kick the subsoil in. Most of this is the clay and subsoil. So that the subsoil will go in first. That'll make a barrier for the surface water to not get in. I'm not going to go into that ditch and level that out. That's not necessary. 10 cubic yards other than what I slopped here and what I left on the ground. Probably left a yard of gravel scattered. The gravel pit wanted to sell me 20 cubic yard because that's what their trucks hold. And I said, well, I got to move it all. I think 10 is more than enough, which it was. And the 10 yards was $320. Having an extra 10 yards would have only been $100 more. So, but it wasn't needed, so that would have been a waste of money. I didn't have the camera on to do this gravel. It's just fundamental. You just pick it up and dump it in. Now, the water will flow through the gravel, so that's why it's not in the pipe yet, the 1¼ pipe. So I'll have to pack it down into this area where it crossed, where there's no more gravel, and then this will start plugging up the spring and forcing it into the hose. This is the 4th spring that I have done. This is, of course, a little bit more major. Some of the others I dug by hand. 2 of them I dug by hand, and that was into a bank where I saw there was seepage. The 3rd one I used my backhoe for a neighbor in similar situation. It took about 15-20 minutes to dig into the bank on his to where we hit the water flow. Then I explained to him what he had to do to make the spring work and produce water out of a pipe. So let's see how this one's going to turn out. Trying to get a spring closer to my house. Here you can see the location, but the outflow is going to be down here, so it's not as close as I wanted. To pump the water from the lower area, I'll probably put a tank in and submersible pump. 220 volts, buried line, buried power cord. 220 because of line loss. If it was closer, it could have went with 110. You can see here that I have the ditch buried, and the only incidents I had were 2 flat tires on the backhoe, loss of brakes on the backhoe, and 1 broken hydraulic line. But those things are repaired. Okay, the pipe, there's 100 feet, maybe a little more, because I have that 20 feet of perforated pipe in there also. So there's roughly 100 feet of pipe buried, and here's the outflow. It's ice cold. That will be enough to supply all the water that I need for my house. And I had a spring down in the valley near the creek bottom. I'll go down there. And it was excellent source of water. 900-gallon tank, and I had a submersible pump in it, and that pumped all the water that I ever needed. Never had an issue, never ran out, perfect drinking water. The issue I had is every year the creek would flood, it would come up about 8 feet, it would submerge my tank. That would happen 2, maybe 3 times a year. Each time I'd have to go into the tank, drain the tank, scrub it out, and start all over with that. So moving the tank up here, no chance of flooding, and it's a closer run from here to the house. This is the tank that I used for my drinking water. It was a 900-gallon insulated milk tank. I got it from a sugar shack that burned down. Somebody making maple sugar. They were using this tank to store the bulk sap in. Okay, after the shack burned, they sold their equipment. I picked this up. And the spring is in this hillside. And this one I hand dug. Didn't take long. I didn't have to go back very far into this hillside. I dug it until I hit a big stone about a foot in height, and it was no idea what the width of it was, but I had a 4-foot opening, and the stone was the entire length of that. Underneath the stone was a layer of sand about an inch thick. Looked like the stone was set on a layer of that sand. That sand was the spring source. So what I did to develop that spring, I took gravel that I gathered from one of these corners down here, carried the gravel over, banked it up against that stone and around that layer of sand. I put a pipe in the middle of that gravel, and then I took a bag of cement and mixed it up and trod it over top of the gravel. Then I buried it all, and the water came out. It was nice, crystal clear and cold, beautiful drinking water. That's the kind everybody should have. So we'll do this again. I'll bury this tank maybe halfway into the ground and run that spring water, the new spring, into this. It should fill that tank up. That flow rate is not much different than the one that I had here, and that was adequate for, I never ran out of water with this. So next step would be to pull this out, get it up on the hill.